Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity where we can meet. We thank you for our lesson we are about to discuss. It's our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, our topic of discussion, depression, the way out. Depression, the way out. And in our world today, a lot of changes have taken place, say, within the last 5 to 10 years. We've had major developments in our societies. We have had progression as well as we have had regression. Pollution for one of those things, and all the laws and so forth that are imposed on our human lives that can cause us personally to be forced to make changes. And in doing so, not everyone takes that well. And even for young folks growing up, if they don't have the right kind of support around them, it's easy for them to feel sad, alone, and depressed. And we find a lot of people are depressed, and it is, one of the things that has been estimated to increase in times like now and even in the next couple of years to come. It's really sad when you listen to the news and you hear of someone who has taken his or her life, someone who has, died, someone who has hurt him or herself and died because of depression. And then you find, it's very disturbing for the family and so forth. So this is quite a relevant topic, and I want to go through at this time with a couple explanations about it and what we can do to help to reverse depression situations. So by the year 2020, depression will be the second largest killer after cardiovascular disease. This was estimated a couple years ago, but it just seemed like depression would be one of those things that's rapidly escalating and will take over and become quite a major killer to people. It is natural to feel down sometimes, but if that low mood lingers day after day, it could signal that one is depressed. So it can signal depression, that one is depressed. Major depression is an episode of sadness or apathy or indifference, along with other symptoms that last at least 2 consecutive weeks and is severe enough to interrupt daily activities. So it's an episode. It's not just a one-off on a particular day when the sky is gray, but it is one that lasts a long time and consecutive 1 week after another. You just seem to be like in a phase of depression, sadness that overwhelms the body, and you can find that you get through very little in your day activity. So here you have a PET scan that shows the brain when one is depressed and when one is not depressed. If you look on this side, the one that's pretty with all the yellow and orange color is a brain that's filled with activity, but a brain that is depressed, very little activity is going on in that head, and they're probably focusing on one thing over and over and not getting past that, and hence the reason that they would sulk, sit in an area and do very little because there's so less activity going on in other parts of the brain. Now, depression increases the risk for strokes, for heart disease in men, death from cancer. When one is depressed, cancer progresses rapidly. Death from pneumonia, suicide, the second leading cause of death in college students. And a lot of young people are taking their lives. You find even prominent people taking their lives. A lot of the movie stars and so forth, they take their lives. If the fame isn't around them anymore, or the busy hustle life seems overwhelming, you find some folks would do this, and you think they have everything going for them. They have the money, they have the fame, they have family, they have friends, they can do anything. And yet they would write a letter, hang themselves, and they're depressed. And you would want to know, well, why? It doesn't matter all of these external things. The inner, what happens within that mind, controls. It controls a whole lot. And it's very important for us to have a healthy mind and a healthy brain and body. But the whole thing with depression, it can lead to an increased risk for some of these conditions. So diabetes, there is a link between diabetes and depression. If depression is not addressed in people with diabetes, it may impede or hinder the healing process with diabetes, and the reverse is also true. That when they remove depression, that they can get well from their diabetes even better and faster. So then you have a condition called SAD, seasonal affective disorder. If your mood matches the season, it's sunny outdoors, you're sunny. If it's summer, sunny in the summer, gloomy in the winter, you find that your mood changes according to the weather. You may have a form of depression called seasonal affective disorder, or SAD. And so you find individuals try to find different mechanisms to help themselves not to feel this condition of SAD. And if you look on the screen here, you have sometimes people would purchase like a light box and shine it upon themselves, trying to create a situation in that little space of environment that's bright and sunny, and to help lift their mood. And for folks who do live, especially in the colder countries, they would tell you, that there's so many days when the sun would set early, like 4 p.m., and you have long nights in the winter season, and they do get depressed. So, it is a condition. So what they do, they place this light box, and they, on the side of the eyes or in front of them, and for about 30 minutes a day, just expose themselves to the light to lift their spirits up. Now, you could also have individuals, research has found that antidepressants are less effective than placebos in treating bipolar disorders. So bipolar having some connection with depression. And studies show that regularity does more than medication for bipolar disorder, example, eating and sleeping at regular times. So if you do encounter someone who has bipolar and you're working with them, try to keep things as simple as possible. Don't get complicated in what you're trying to tell them in terms of making better changes for their health. So for example, you break down how to every day just go out into the sunlight and sit in the sun for an hour, or walk in the sun for an hour. That's all you would say to them. You don't go into all the science behind it, because the mind really cannot handle all of that. It's too much. And they wouldn't know how to interpret and apply. So you just break things down nice and simple. So they love things to be simple, and also regularity, some form of routine, and that they can handle. And as they become stronger, they can get out of the bipolar situation at some point, but you find there is a connection between depression and bipolar condition. So what are some of the symptoms of depression? You have persistent, sad, anxious, or empty mood. So people can have a loss of interest or pleasure. Anything goes, whatever, it doesn't matter. Then you have difficulty concentrating, difficulty making decisions. Their mind seems to be elsewhere regularly. You find that poor appetite or too much appetite, eating too much or eating too little can be a form of depression. Recurrent thoughts of death or suicide, fatigue and decreased energy are also symptoms. Then you have feelings of worthlessness or excessive guilt. And you can hear it in their conversations where that comes out. And increased agitation or increased slowness. And you can just watch the person slowly move about and say, something is wrong. You can also have poor sleep or too much sleep, where individuals would want to stay in all the time. And I want to add, so they would shut themselves in their bedroom. They'd also want to have the curtains drawn, closed in. And you find even in the whole house, they don't want light to come in. They just want all the curtains to be down and the place dark, and they would choose dark colors for their paint and furniture and everything like that. So you find, all of that can be and is a sign of depression. Then we also have an interesting one called postpartum or baby blues, where women can have children and their hormones are so disrupted that they actually go through a phase where they are depressed and they don't want to see their newborn baby. They don't want to take care of the baby, and they can have that to them. So it's very important for us to recognize the symptoms and give support to individuals that we see going down this path. So when can a diagnosis of depression take place? If you are experiencing 5 or more of these classical signs, psychologists would say you are experiencing major depression. So you want 5 or more of those symptoms to be manifested at the same time before a diagnosis can take place. If you have less than 5, you would be told that, well, it's a mild form of depression. But don't just take that for granted. Anything mild or you deal with it head on, and you look at the aspect of prevention and avoid that just escalating on you. So males reflect depression in the form of irritation and anger. You find they have outbursts, and so their response to depression is different compared to females. Females would show sadness, tiredness, shut in themselves. Females suffer more from depression because of hormonal issues and the imbalance between estrogen and progesterone. Progesterone is needed to make the happy hormones. And example, emotional depression and postpartum depression after pregnancy, all hormone related. So females can suffer more from depression than the males, but they express it differently. So the common causes of depression. We have the prominent theory is altered brain structure and chemical function. So when the chemical balance within the brain is off, that can trigger depression. And how can the chemical balance in your brain be off. The kinds of things we drink, what we eat, what you put into the body, what you feed the mind on, because simply watching, say for example, you looked at an action movie, you would be like all your muscles so tense, just ready to, get into action. You probably sit on the edge of your seat and you're like anxious. And what about if you looked at a horror movie? You find that the mind starts, being agitated in a different way. But what about if you looked at a sad movie, some sad love story movie, or, something? You would be more, your mind more mellow. You're thinking about this. You might be drawn to tears. So your mind, your brain activity is happening in there, and it's being waved in different directions. So all of those things, so not only, what you intake from in your mouth, but also what your eyes see, what your ears hear, those things can alter the structures and the chemical reactions in the brain. Hormonal imbalance is another cause for depression. And if your hormones are off, and then you have improper thyroid function, that can affect and the body. High stress, and stress can be from various reasons. If it is, say for example, you're excited an exam, you're getting a new job. So stress doesn't have to be for a negative purpose. It can be triggered because of a positive thing. So stress, both sides, negative or positive. So chemicals are also called neurotransmitters, and they can become unbalanced. And what pushes these chemicals, of course, you also have stress of a traumatic event, such as losing a loved one or a job or physical abuse. Those stressful situations also can trigger and cause an imbalance in your chemicals within the brain. So there's some other triggers biologically, as we just talked about, the brain chemical reactions. What about genetics? If you had a member of your family that suffered from depression, a parent, a sibling or so, that from a young age, a sibling, but if you had a parent who was depressed, it's easier for you to be more susceptible to depression yourself. And especially if the mother, if it was, the parent and they made you in that stage, the child can come out with, that tendency to become depressed at some stage in life. So if you do recognize that genetics is at play, it's very important for you to take measures to prevent getting to that point of depression, maybe avoiding sad situations in life, things that would cause you to have a down environment around you, or you're just in a state where you're arguing all the time. You choose to be happy instead. You choose to use positive things and words and conversations around you. So gender is another. We talked about it, that women are more susceptible than men to be depressed. Age is another factor. You find the young can be in teenage years and so forth, in colleges and so forth, they can go through some form of depression, exams, being successful in school or not if you're not making it, and the pressure that might be placed upon you, the expectations from the home, from your friends and so forth, can drive one to take his or her life. Age can also be on the other end of the spectrum, where one is elderly and figure, well, nobody cares about me anymore. I'm no use in life anymore. I'm just parked up here. What am I doing? So that can be a trigger for depression. And that's why we need to go visit our elderly people, the little sunshine band. Take some sunshine and love to them and make them feel good, do something for them in their home, and change things up, brighten the scenery and so forth. They do appreciate it, and it can be such a great help to them. Health conditions is another trigger. If people are sick all the time, one after the other, and they feel like they're not getting a handle or control over their sickness, that can lead them down to being depressed. Trauma or grief, some traumatic event, abuse or fights and so forth, grief, if you lose a spouse, a close friend, that can cause individuals to become depressed. Other trigger changes and stressful events, as we talked about, that can be positive or negative changes. And medication and substances, there can be some medication with the side effects that can cause low brain activity, change of chemical balance within the brain, or even depression as a straight out side effect of some drug medication. So in conventional treatments, you find that certain medicines are offered: Prozac, Zoloft, Paxil, Celiac, and a couple of them. And these are offered to individuals to try to suppress those hormones that's causing depression. And they're antidepressants. And so they're given to individuals. But a lot of the times it doesn't work. And what you find that it may help in a situation for a while, but you have not taken care of the cause, to remove that cause, which is what we are supposed to be doing. Look for the true cause of the sickness and then intelligently go to remove the cause. So if it is that you don't remove the cause, you would be just treating the sore, plastering it all up with these medications. Then another conventional treatment would be talk therapy. And this would just make one feel better, but it does not actually make the person get better. So they can talk and go back in the past, and they can relive so many situations and conversations that brought them to where they are. But then what do? So it doesn't take away depression. So it cannot be too often repeated that whatever is taken into the stomach affects not only the body, but ultimately the mind as well. And that's a statement from Mind, Character, and Personality, Volume 1, page 235. So there are some natural remedies for improving the mind, the body, and soul for eternity, because, if it is that you are depressed, then you are in no great mood to be worshiping God in truth and in good spirit. And if you are depressed and it does lead you to take your life in the form of suicide, then you don't have a chance even to ask for forgiveness or to repent or to make a turnaround, because you're gone. So we want to improve the mind and body and soul for eternity. It's not just for now. So you go back to looking at how can we have a healthy body, mind, and soul. Depression is a disease, and so it's an effort of nature to free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. Your depression comes about because of a violation of the laws of health. And so even if you had SAD and it's an environmental thing and influenced environmentally, walking, exercise is one way to help to produce happy hormones and, to keep you happy. So you're in the winter season, but instead of being frigid and say, I will not go outdoors and walk, you need to get exercise. So find some way to do so. So there are different ways in which we can apply the laws of health to help bring good to the body. And so even in depression, we need to apply these laws of health. They are pure air, sunlight, abstemiousness, rest, exercise, proper diet, the use of water, trust in divine power. These are the true remedies. And these are what is going to take us out of depression. And so let's look at one of the nutritional aids out there that can help us. Simple item within our food, tryptophan. It is a raw amino acid needed in order for serotonin to be produced. All right, so it's a raw amino acid that comes together to produce serotonin. But in these foods, say black-eyed peas, pumpkin seeds, avocado, almond nuts, they are rich in tryptophan. So if you're eating them, you will be able to have serotonin. Serotonin is a hormone that keeps you active and alert. And so avocados, it helps with the strengthening our nervous system, but it also helps in creating serotonin, this hormone within the body, and it reduces the need for serotonin medication like Prozac, Zoloft, and Paxil, etc. Those medications are given to help lift the spirits, but if you focus on your food that's high in tryptophan, you will be producing serotonin for yourself and have less need for the medication that's giving that same and trying to build up that same hormone. So that's how the food can work for you. So serotonin also helps with regulating our mood, our appetite, and sensory perception. Now, which law of health enhances serotonin? Sunlight. Sunlight enhances serotonin, and it brightens our day and lifts our spirits up. So then foods also like omega-3 foods that help in terms of depression. So you have chia seed, flaxseed, walnuts, green leafy vegetables, olive oil. All these are great foods high in omega-3 that helps the brain to have its chemicals within the brain sort of be back into balance. Walnuts, the flax, and the chia seeds and so forth, they help that brain and aid in terms of reversing depression. So what are some lifestyle changes that can alleviate depression? Have a look at birth control pills, steroids, or diet pills. They are connected with depression. So avoid ingesting those birth control, steroids, diet pills. Avoid them. Be careful with medication side effects. Over 200 medicinal drugs are reported to cause depression. And you can search that up and have a look. But depression can be a real cause and a side effect from medication that you're taking. So exercise is very important, and you want to exercise every day of the week, at least 1 hour of walking. And as you walk, it helps to produce those happy hormones, endorphins, and lift your spirits up. So these are some of the lifestyle changes that you can make. Also increase your water intake. A lot of people don't have the attitude of drinking water, and you want to develop that habit of drinking lots of water. And so, the guidance is given as to how much water should you drink. Drink as much as you can throughout an entire day. But watch your meal times. You want to have at least 15 to 30 minutes before you eat, and then 2 hours after you're finished eating, then you can drink water again. If your urine is pale, yellow to clear, then you know you're drinking adequate amounts of water, and you're drinking this water mouthfuls at a time so that your cells will absorb. Your cells can handle approximately 2 ounces of water at a time, and you want your cells to be absorbing this water, not just you drink the water gulp. You would flood them, and you have to spill it out. So if you keep just mouthful sipping, you would do well to retain water within the body. Remember, your brain is 85% of water, and so it needs to be really hydrated in order to function properly and keep that chemical balance in good shape. So you also have another lifestyle aid of hot and cold contrast showers, where you have your shower, you run 3 minutes hot, and this is, warm, hot as the body can take. 3 minutes hot, 30 seconds cold. And you do that for about, 3 times. 3 minutes hot, 30 seconds cold. 3 minutes hot, 30 seconds cold. 3 minutes hot, 30 seconds cold. And you do that every day. And you can do it a couple of times in the day if you wish. But you run that for about 6 months. It helps to raise neurochemicals in the brain, like the serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, and so forth. It helps to raise those chemicals to aid in better brain function and to avoid depression. A balanced circadian rhythm maintained through practical lifestyle habits such as regular sleep patterns and consistent daily routines help patients to avert new manic or depressive episodes longer than therapy focused on regulating their mood symptoms and medications. So it's better that you help someone to have rhythm, routine within their lives, have regular sleep patterns and so forth. That goes a long way in terms of reversing depression than the use of medication. So because you can have one on medication, but their life is out of whack. They still have no routine. They still don't put within their lives any structure, any purpose. And they're not exercising. They don't get proper rest. The body, because they're giving medication for one particular aspect and not looking at the whole body in total. And so having a more holistic approach to dealing with this is going to go a long way and be better for the individual. So if problem falling asleep and staying asleep, get out into the sunlight anywhere between 10 and 2. Individuals who are depressed most times would say, I can't sleep. And it's because they can't sleep that they feel really low the following day. So get out into the sunlight, and you want to have, at least if you're light skin, Caucasian, 10-15 minutes of sunlight exposure daily. It's going to be enough for some individuals. Whereas if your skin is darker, you would need like 45 minutes to an hour and a half daily, because it takes a longer while for that sunlight to penetrate through the skin to be able to trigger the hormones for your body to make vitamin D. And so that's, the importance of getting out into the sunlight between the hours of 10 and 2. Now, understand the importance of rest. 2 good hours, 2 hours good sleep before 12 o'clock is worth more than 4 hours after 12 o'clock in the night. So you want to be able to, someone who is depressed, go to bed earlier rather than in the later hours. So if you're going to bed 11, 12, oh no, that's not going to help you. The latest should be 10 p.m. And try to be in your bed a little before the 10 p.m. so that you can get that good restful sleep. And when you do go out into the sunlight, it aids in promoting sleep. And it also helps in balancing your circadian rhythm within the body, and the body can have that pattern of rest again. So spend time daily also reading the Bible. Studies show that spirituality helps recovery from depression. Depression is lower among those that have some form of intrinsic religion because it gives the purpose to the life. And you find when people move away from Christ, all of these things that they are at risk for, even being depressed. So the whole habit of getting up, on a Saturday morning and going off to church and so forth, of worship within the home, of worship with a community of people, group, and having Bible study and so forth. Those things are stimulating to the brain to cause you to think. And you're thinking, you're analyzing, you're giving response, you're participating, you're given something to do, so it adds purpose to your life. You have something to think about in the week, about what to look forward to on the weekend. And so all of that contributes to, adding some sort of stability and purpose to life. We were created to be in like that. We weren't created to just stick ourselves up into a corner and not have interaction with people or think or be purposeful. And so if you do have religion and a relationship with God, that can help you to overcome. If you think about doing any crazy thing, like taking your life, you do also think, how am I going to account to God for this? So there is that restraining power. And you also recognize that it is a plan of the enemy to depress the mind. There is a battle for the mind of the follower of Christ. And that's being known, that what's happening is certainly satanic, and you need to get out of it by God's grace, and you can. So the influence of pure, fresh air is to cause the blood to circulate healthfully throughout the system. It refreshes the body and tends to render it strong and healthy, while at the same time its influence is decidedly felt upon the mind, imparting a degree of composure and serenity. It excites the appetite and renders the digestion of food more perfect and induces sound, sweet sleep. So even inhaling pure, fresh air has a decided, a direct influence upon our mind. Our mind feels even better when our environment is clean and the air smells sweet and clean. So what are some dietary changes that can alleviate depression? Now, oat water. Now, I want to put a plug in here. We hear a lot today about gluten intolerance, and some people being resistant to gluten, and they need to go on a gluten-free diet. And it is true that there is a connection between individuals who are gluten intolerant and depression. And so if it is that you're eating foods that is, that is composed of wheat, rye, barley, spelt, and you are gluten intolerant, by eating any food of such nature, be it bread, a bun, a cake, or so, that comes from wheat, rye, barley, spelt, you will find that your brain can be affected and you can be depressed because there is a connection with these high gluten foods. And understanding too that these wheat structures and these other kinds of grains, they're hybridized, they're different, they're not the same as they were back in biblical times or in early 20th century or so forth. And what we have today, they're genetically tampered with, and it is causing a lot of problems within individuals. So this is one area in which we also look and put individuals in a gluten-free diet simply to rule out gluten as a cause, and should it be their major cause, then you find the improvement takes place. But it always does, because another thing too is that the gluten intolerant person will very more than likely have leaky gut syndrome. And so your blood is being affected, inflammation is getting out into your bloodstream, and you're going to have problems like depression. The mind is going to be disturbed. So this is another topic for you to look out for on gluten intolerance, and there you would have a whole lot more explanation on this linked to depression and other autoimmune conditions that can come upon the body. And so oats, if it, you try to get like a gluten-free oats, because oats can be prepared in a facility where you also have wheat, rye, barley, and spelt. So you want one that hasn't been exposed to those other grains. So look for gluten-free oats, and you can have oats water that helps with calming the mind and uplift in an uplifting way, and so that one is not depressed. And we have had lots of people who have drank oats water, and this is proven to help them tremendously. So you're taking your toasted rolled oats and you soak it for 15 to 20 minutes in water. So you can use like 1 cup to 4 cups of water. You soak that in there, and so the oats, and once it's soaked, then you can just strain out some and drink, and you pour it out and you keep drinking that water as in a medicinal way. So you drink it in between your meals and mouthfuls at a time, and it helps with stabilizing the mind. It also helps with invigorating the body to lift your spirits up. Then lecithin is another item. 2 tablespoons on your food daily can also help to strengthen the mind. You find lecithin will also help to improve blood circulation to the brain. Magnesium, that which you will get within bran, pumpkin seeds, almond nuts. Magnesium is also helpful. Tryptophan foods, as we looked at, the black-eyed peas, avocado, pumpkin seeds, almonds. Then we have folates, which you get in beans, wheat germs, spinach, lettuce, and omega-3 fats within your walnuts and your green leafy and so forth. Recognize that there are so many different kinds of foods that specifically prepared and provided by the Lord to strengthen the mind and to lift our spirits up. If you are iron deficiency can also cause one to be depressed. You feel more fatigue and so forth, and you don't have oxygen to the blood as well as you should. So you may get like an iron supplement or increase iron intake in your foods, such as using like fenugreek, dried spirulina, or kelp, blackstrap molasses, soybean, sesame seeds, bran, lentils. Note that one can become iron deficient if you're using tea and caffeine and vinegar. That can cause you to be iron deficient. And if you're using undercooked grains, so you're undercooked because of the phytic acid within these grains. If it's too much phytic acid on your plate or within the day that you are intaking, that can also cause iron deficiency. So your oats that you're using, make sure that you toast it for at least 3 hours, because if it's undercooked, it's going to cause iron deficiency as well as deficiencies in calcium, magnesium, copper, and and interfere with the enzymes for digesting protein and starches. So then we have fava beans that produces L-dopa. L-dopa aids in depression. And sometimes folks would go to the bean and they pull out and extract the L-dopa component and create a pill for you in a package form, and you eat it. You pay lots of money to take this pill. But rather get the fava bean, which is like a broad bean, and eat that instead, and it's going to help with the depression and to lift the person up. L-dopa in the fava bean, also fava, F-A-V-A, it also helps with individuals who have Parkinson's disease. And so Parkinson's use lots of fava beans to prevent, as well as to aid in restoring good health to one with Parkinson's. It produces L-dopa and helps with the production of dopamine. Now, baked potatoes, this also helps for depressed individuals. So have a lot of baked potatoes within their diet. We talked about the flaxseed, 2 tablespoons, sesame seed, 2 tablespoons daily. The flaxseed must be ground. Blend that up in a coffee grinder, or if you have a blender, put enough flaxseed to cover the blade, and then you pulse that, break it down. You must break the seed in order to get the nutrients from it. Any excess that you get beyond 2 tablespoons on a daily basis, you keep in the fridge. At 2 tablespoons is the maximum that you would need to use with the flaxseed. Then lots of fruits and vegetables. Avoid that you should have. Use lots of fruits and veggies. Avoid the use of energy drinks, chocolate, caffeine. Those are addictive. Give you a feeling of high, and then you go into a low, low state of enthusiasm and so forth, and that can be depressive. Avoid the use of smoking and the use of and drinking of alcohol. Now, there are some herbal treatments that can be recommended for treating depression. And so St. John's wort can fight mild depression. Maca powder can help. Catnip, calamine, chamomile, and kelp on your food. Kelp can be used straight, the kelp powder. You can just sprinkle that on your food. But so these different herbs can be used with good success for depression. And you do use like about 2 tablespoons to 4 cups of water. And some you need to boil and some you need to draw in hot boiled water that you would just draw it for 3 to 4 hours. So these can be used, like if you're using maca, catnip, and kelp, you're not going to be like using all of these herbs at the same time, but you can interchange them 1 week with one set of herbs, another week with another set. Okay. So we've talked about trust, the importance of trust in divine power and depression. However courageous and successful a man may be in the performance of a special work, unless he looks constantly to God when circumstances arise to test his faith, he will lose his courage. So it doesn't matter how successful a man may be, how great his work is, if he doesn't look constantly to God, when difficulties come, he's going to be depressed. He's going to fold up and crumble under. But the person who is dependent upon God, who exercises faith and trust, but they believe in the true and living God, God is going to strengthen them. He is going to help them through any test, and they would come out victoriously. Now, God wants you to be cheerful, but trials come. So he wants us to be cheerful, free, happy, and trustful, ready to say with Paul, our light affliction, which is but for a moment, worketh for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. While we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are not seen. For the things which are seen are temporal, but the things which are not seen are eternal. And so, we focus on the more eternal things and not for what is just before us. Because there's a saying that this too shall pass, or our circumstances, it's going to change. I know nothing lasts forever. So don't get depressed and sad about it. Rather choose to be cheerful and happy. Now, our trials, this is a beautiful statement here that we love. It's manuscript number 20, page 124, paragraph 4. It says, our trials are God's workmen, and if borne with patience, they will prepare you for a recompense of reward. Therefore, you should be of good courage under them. So our trials are God's workmen, and we need to bear them with patience. Bear the trials with patience, and it can be, really testing for that. Sometimes, someone is unwell and they're so impatient. What do you know? The nature's method of healing is slow, is gradual, and to be impatient, it seems slow. But if we carry on, leave her alone, she will do her work wisely and well. So these trials, they come, but they're God's workmen to help refine us and that we would remain strong. You have to talk faith. You have to live faith. You have to act faith, that you may have an increase of faith. That comes from Faith and Works, page 78, paragraph 2. So I'd like to repeat it. You have to talk faith. Talk about it. Live it. Live the faith. Act the faith, that you may have an increase in faith. Talk, live, and act it out. And then there's another beautiful statement in Christ Object Lessons, page 146. It says, talk and act as if your faith is invincible. Talk and act as if your faith is invincible. All right, and don't let anyone take that away from you. So there we have our session on depression. There is also a book, Ministry of Healing, where there's a chapter in the book Ministry of Healing called Mind Cure, M-I-N-D, Mind Cure. And if you were to read that, it's really uplifting. I remember Brother Luke sharing his experience of one occasion. Someone asked him, to speak to a young lady to help her with her depressed condition. And he was not in the country at the time, so he had the missionaries there do the consult. And then he said to them, it gave instructions simply to read the book Ministry of Healing and look at the chapter Mind Cure and read that entire chapter. The lady read the entire chapter and she was so inspired and helped by the messages within that chapter that it caused her to, be interested in reading the entire book, Ministry of Healing. And she was blessed by it in that her depression went away. And something that she'd been struggling with for years, through the power of the Holy Spirit and the words that he had brought to her and the changes in her life with simply applying the 8 laws of health. The home was restored where the mother, the wife, was herself again, and they continued to be a happy family serving the Lord. So these are some of the benefits that the book has to offer. Ministry of Healing, the chapter Mind Cure, and even as you work and help individuals, and you're sitting in a consultation with them, have your book in your hand and turn to that chapter and ask them to read passages of that chapter. Because I'm sure that you having read it would have highlighted certain areas that would stand out to you. And so you put it in the hand of the person and you ask them read that. And it does make a huge difference for what they have read. So I'd like us now to take the recording off as we seek to open up for questions.